Hello, welcome back. We had another wonderful lunch.
Yes, we did.
Yes. Just perfect size and perfect portion. Perfect. So we need to teach you another Chinese word for welcoming Professor Wang. So how do we say 欢迎你? 欢迎. How can I say it? So Huaying. 欢迎. Yeah, 欢迎王老师. Excellent. So 老师 is a generic term for teacher. So professors and all kinds of ways of addressing a person, but 老师 is generic and shows huge respect and honor. Okay, so we can Confucius and we can call Confucius 老师 as well. I think. Am I making that up? Okay, so Professor Wang, Chuming Wang from the University of Guangdong University of Foreign Studies, one of the most prestigious foreign language universities in China. We have three, 北外, 上外, 往外, 北上广, the three prestigious ones. And Professor Wang works at Guangdong University of Foreign Studies, which is way at north, very close to Hong Kong. Imagine some of our departments in here in the United States struggling to have a department of foreign languages. And in China, we have universities just for dedicated to study foreign languages. Right? So Stephen set up this morning saying that we may be able to have a new environment, new perspectives on eco-linguistics, and China might be a good place to start with. So, with that, Professor Wang, Chuming, Wang 老师，欢迎你。And the tradition is I give you a hug. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you, Dr. Zheng. It's really an honor to be given this opportunity, excellent opportunity to present my research. And actually, it was 15 or 16 years ago, I got an opportunity to visit the Department of Second Language Studies. And at that time, I was very, very grateful to the department, to Gabby Kasper, Professor Kasper. And I was also invited to give a brown bag speech. And I still remember Professor Black Woman was present, and Bonnie Schultz, and quite a few big names were present. And it recalled to me the famous hypothesis that these scholars produced at that time. For example, dictionary's noticing hypothesis, and Bonnie Schultz's access phone transfer hypothesis, and quite a lot. Okay, Ray Woman's logical problem of foreign language learning, and so on. So I call this department a department of hypotheses. Okay. Today I'm going to present another hypothesis, and the title of my presentation is the X argument. X stands for she, a Chinese word, but she is difficult to pronounce for non-native speakers of Chinese, so I use X argument. But try not to confuse X argument with Chomsky's, okay? X argument. So it's different, totally different. Okay. So my presentation will cover the following points. We'll first define what X argument is, and present my my hypothesis, which I mentioned earlier, called creative imitation. One is creation, the other is imitation. They're totally in sharp contrast. Okay? And then I will try to justify the X argument in terms of its cognitive basis and provide empirically justifiable evidence for the X argument. And then the X argument has quite a few implications, theoretical or practical. I will single out two for some discussion, and finally conclude with a summary. Okay, I would like to begin with a classical question that is related to language acquisition. Why is it that children learn to speak their first language speedily, whereas adult second language learning is extremely laborious? And some researchers will say children acquiring their first language is a universal success, and adults L2 learning is a universal failure. And why is it the case? The UG-based approach has an answer, because we human beings are endowed with a wide-in mechanism called language acquisition device, or otherwise known as universal grammar. And this universal grammar is responsible for language, specifically for language acquisition. It's responsible for high efficiency and speedy acquisition of language. The point is whether there is any answer from the usage-based approach. Usage-based approach emphasizes interaction, experience, exposure, and frequency. And all these would take time. Okay? And then I try to offer an explanation for the speedy acquisition of language. This is the X argument. The X argument makes 2 points. First, language learned through she. And the learning efficiency is also driven by she as well. It's achieved by she as well. She is a Chinese word with a composite meaning of completion, extension, and creation, or even prediction. Okay? And I would like to use the acronym CEC, stands for she. Okay? But the core meaning is extension. So in my presentation, I will use extension, she, or CEC interchangeably. Okay? Most time I would use extension because it's easy to understand. But extension is an incomplete interpretation of the Chinese word she. Okay, just a simple word can mean so many things. Okay, the X argument just makes 2 points. Language learned through she, and learning efficiency is through she as well. Typical she or extension occurs in dialogue, okay? And interlocutors complete and extend each other's speech creatively. This is CEC. So, and as in questions and answers, with she, we extend each other's speeches. And children interacting with adults and elder learners with native speakers in situated dialogue lead to high efficiency of language learning due to the simple procedure of she or extension. For example, turn-taking in response to each other's speech in productive ways. And the X argument, in principle, accords with the usage-based approach to language learning. This is usage-based approach, although earlier I was quite a little bit critical of the usage-based approach. And in the process of extension of she or CEC, language knowledge is contingent, emergent, and derivable from experience. This is typical of usage-based view of language learning, contingent, when we communicate. And one might ask, are you promoting your own theory when your study can be tied to already existing usage-based approach or theories? Are you promoting? In other words, is there anything new about the approach, about the X argument? Okay? This is simply redundant, something redundant. I would say yes. We have some. I would say this is something new about the X argument. It's premised on two observations of two prerequisites, and I would say X argument has an element of innovation, and innovation often comes from common sense knowledge. You give a deep thought to, okay? And these two observations, to me, is commonsensical. First, dialogue is full of incomplete stretches of discourse. Second, there is an asymmetry existing between language comprehension and production, in that one's production abilities or comprehension abilities always exceed the production abilities. We can read a good fiction with good comprehension, but we may not be able, and most of us are not able to write a fiction, a good fiction, for example. Okay. And then these two observations, or these two prerequisites, to me are common sense. If you want to falsify the X argument, you can critique these two prerequisites, two observations. And there are two consequences following the two observations. First, incompleteness of discourse motivates extension. Since it's incomplete, you have to extend. Okay? If you do not extend or do not share, dialogue will come to a stop. You will not be able to conduct the dialogue. And since language is a dialogue, okay, dialogic interaction is the most natural way in which children acquire their first language. The logic is that language is learned through share, through extension. If you do not share, dialogue will come to a stop. So incompleteness of discourse motivates share or extension. Another consequence is that asymmetry between comprehension and production necessitates what I call creative imitation. The learner tends to resolve the asymmetry by imitating or drawing on language uses from what he or she comprehends. This is what I call the creative imitation hypothesis. The hypothesis states, in general, in the process of extension or CC or she, as in the dialogue with an adult, the child tends to imitate adults' way of language use in expressing ideas of his or her own creation, particularly when he or she feels lack of the necessary linguistic means to express him or herself. The language constructions so imitated in this way are most efficiently retained or learned for subsequent communicative use. The same process occurs in second language acquisition or second language learning. This is the creative imitation hypothesis. In this hypothesis, what is created is the ideas initiated by the learner. So human agency has a crucial role to play in this initiation. Note that what is created is the idea. And what is imitated in this hypothesis is the language used to express the learner's ideas. It's the form, it's the language of forms. Okay, imitate language forms. So both imitation and creation occur simultaneously. Okay, they co-occur. So imitation is the language. Creation is the ideas. So I would like to say a few more words about the imitation because it is often associated with the discredited behaviorist view of language learning. Imitation is a bad word. Well, but imitation during extension or she has some characteristics different from behaviorist imitation. It is driven by communicative needs. You imitate because you need to express your ideas. Okay, you want to communicate. And you need the linguistic means to help you. And the imitation occurs in the rich context of communicative use of language. Facial expressions, body language, the preceding speech, and the environment. Now, all these contexts will contribute to understanding and the learning of the linguistic forms. And when imitation of the linguistic constructions, language constructions, in the rich context, will reinforce the form-context mapping. And this mapping is extremely important from a usage-based approach. Okay, language can't possibly be learned in the contextualized way. And this contextualized mapping can facilitate subsequent appropriate use of the form being imitated. This is what I called the learn together, use together, okay, and LTUT for short. And this I call it LTUT principle because what occurs with linguistic form being learned will affect its retention, retrieval, and use. Okay. LTUT, learn together, use together. So context makes language learning efficient, possible. And what is more, imitation is dynamically adapted to the change in meaning making. The contents keep changing. It's a fluid. But you can't possibly practice the language first and then make use of it later. But here, a language imitated is dynamically adapted to the changing thoughts. So, imitation is concomitant with the ideas being communicated. In a word, imitation in the creative imitation hypothesis is anything but a parody. Having discussed the imitation, let me move to the cognitive basis that justifies the X argument. As said earlier, the X argument construes language learning as a creative imitation process. And this process is driven by the comprehension production asymmetry. Okay, there's an asymmetry. And what the learner comprehends is from the other interlocutor, and what she produces is something of his or her own creation. This is the difference. Okay. The comprehension from the other interlocutor. In a way, language is learned through the interaction between comprehension and production. Interaction is a key word here, is crucial. And we learn through interaction. We learn language through interaction between comprehension and production, all because of the asymmetry between the two. And extension or she is a driving force of this interaction. Okay, and the she makes this interaction between comprehension and production possible. And the interaction has an intrinsic property, or we call it hallmark property, that is alignment. Alignment is a social cognitive process involving adaptation and coordination. Okay? And then the more intense the interaction, the stronger the alignment effect. Okay? And interactive alignment is conducive to ironing out the asymmetry between comprehension and production. So producing a leveling off effect. This leveling off effect or alignment effect is synonymous with learning effect. When learner's production aligns with the comprehension, more advanced speaker's speech, language learning occurs. It's the cognitive basis. Okay? And what is important? Asymmetry between comprehension and production bears on efficiency of language learning. And the X argument capitalizes on this asymmetry and facilitates language learning and enhances language learning efficiency. This is because comprehension and production mediated by extension or she occur in close proximity. This is very important. In closest proximity. And then what has been just learned in the preceding discourse can be put to immediate use and scaffold the follow-up production. This will gives rise to efficiency of language learning. In fact, she or extension intimately couples creation with imitation, input with output, comprehension with production. And this intensifies interaction between each pair, hence a strong alignment or learning effect. The stronger the interaction, the stronger alignment and the learning effect. So, and this X argument, seen from this perspective, can account for children's speedy acquisition of language. It can also be made use to improve adults' language learning efficiency. So the rationale or the logic behind the X argument is like this. Language learning starts with she. Language learned through extension or CEC. This is the origin of learning. And then she, extension, leads to interaction. Okay, without a she, without extension, there is no interaction. Okay. And then interaction gives rise to alignment, and alignment is synonymous with learning. This is logic. So she, or extension, is the origin of learning. Okay. Now, having discussed the X argument and its theoretical basis, let me move to the application of this X argument. And as I said earlier, the extension improves or enhances efficiency of language learning. In order to achieve this efficiency, we can design tasks to deliberately encourage learners to shift or extend what they comprehend from the quality input. We can design tasks of this kind to improve efficiency of learning. But how? The point is that everybody would be concerned about this. How to do that? Here, I use a diagram to show how tasks are designed. They're called L2 continuation task. And as I discussed earlier, she, or extension, stands between comprehension and production, mediates comprehension and production. Okay? Bring comprehension and production together. Okay? And we can, at the one end, you have comprehension, the other end is production. She stands in between. At the comprehension side, we have input, which takes the form of listening and reading. On the production side, we have output, which takes the form of speaking, writing, and translating. Okay? We can design, the task can be so designed that we provide the learners with a piece of, incomplete piece of discourse. Ask them to listen to and read that incomplete piece of discourse and complete it and extend it creatively through speaking, writing, and translating. And there are a lot of combinations of the task. For example, we can ask students to read a complete piece of discourse and then complete it, extend it, speak through speaking. If we add a visual mode, there are more combinations. For example, we provide some audio-visual things to accompany listening and reading. We can design a lot of continuation tasks. We call this continuation tasks. And continuation task is not limited to speaking, as in dialogue. It can be used in reading and writing, and the translation as well. Now, one might ask, is there any evidence supporting your X argument and the effectiveness of the continuation task? I would say yes. Our team, we have got a team, and conducted quite a few studies, and I would list some of them, which the papers have been published. And for example, this paper is published in Applied Linguistics in 2015, and the study addressed the issue as to whether alignment existed in an L2 written continuation task. Before this study, there was finding that alignment existed in dialogue only, not in monologue. Okay? Not to speak of written continuation task. Okay? We try to find out whether there is alignment and alignment effect in the written continuation task. Participants of the study were Chinese-speaking EFL learners. They were asked to continue in English a story with its ending removed. Half of the subjects completed the task after reading the L2 English version of the story, and the other half, the L1 Chinese version, followed by writing in English. Two groups continue in English, but one group read Chinese version, the other group English version. Okay, the task was so designed, and we hypothesized that with the English version available, you could align, and there's an alignment effect, and you could write better. And the results, okay, showed first, alignment did exist in the written production continuation task. The participants produced significantly fewer English errors. You have a model there. You produced fewer errors when the learners performed the English version task than the Chinese version task, due to the alignment between production and the comprehension. Okay? This lends support to Coder and Geist's observation that what has been learned affects what can be processed. Okay, they noticed this long ago. Still another study was conducted by Zhang, published in Language Learning Research. The study addressed the question as to whether there was any difference between the effects of a continuation task and comprehensive corrective feedback on EFL learners' writing development. Okay, the continuation task could be used to provide corrective feedback. Students could self-correct themselves. Okay, whether there is such a self-corrective feedback effect. Another issue that was addressed in the study was whether the input language in the continuation task made a difference in L2 writing development. The participants were Chinese-speaking EFL learners as well, and the quasi-experimental study was conducted to assess participants' L2 writing development based on a pre-test, post-test, delayed post-test design implemented in 4 intact EFL freshman classes. The results showed, first, the group doing the continuation task outperformed the control group with respect to language use. Second, the input language of the continuation task had a significant effect on language accuracy in resulting essays. So you have a model there. And the effect is immediate. Okay? You can improve the learner's English immediately. Okay? It makes significant difference. More study, Hong and Shi study, addressed the question whether the continuation task held Chinese as a second language, not English. Chinese as a second language learners acquired Chinese numeral classifiers. Okay, there was a presentation yesterday about the learning of numeral classifiers. Classifiers pose a headache for second language learners of Chinese. Okay, take Tiao, okay, for example, we can say 一条毛巾, long, thin objects, we use 条. But we can't say 一条笔, 一条 pen, pencil, something like. Okay, we can't say that. So in most cases, there's no logical, humanly possible reason, okay, for the use of the classifiers. We have to learn one by one. And there are about 900 numeral classifiers in Chinese. So this study made an attempt to find out whether the continuation task could help learners acquire the numeral classifiers. Another issue had to do with the performance of the continuation task, long-term or short-term effect, not the retention. This is important. If the effect is immediate, whether it can be retained. Okay. Participants were L2 learners of Chinese, and after reading a picture cube, we provide them with a picture cube text. We have a picture of a room, and at some time there was a text describing the room. Okay. Having read the text, the participants were asked to describe their own rooms, okay, with different objects in different locations, positions. Then, when they described their own rooms, they would come up, they needed the classifiers. So, they could imitate the preceding text, and draw on the use of the classifiers, and put these classifiers into use in their own writing. Okay? And then the results show that the continuation tasks significantly improved the learning of Chinese classifiers, and there was a long-term retention of this learning, because they produce, they imitate, the language is imitated, and the ideas were created by the learner. Okay, this gives to an effect of creative imitation. Okay, so we find a way to learn numeral classifiers and the effective way as well. Another study also was conducted with the Chinese as a second language learners, and the study aimed to find out whether elder Chinese learners align with the input text in the continuation task of Chinese writing, this Chinese writing. And the subjects or participants were Korean-speaking learners of the Chinese, Putonghua Mandarin Chinese. And they were asked to continue in English 2 incomplete stories after reading their Chinese versions. The results showed alignment occurred as shown in the using of more lexical, phrasal, and grammatical structures from the original stories. They committed significantly fewer errors in most targeted structures. They focused on some targeted structures. So this is very effective. And the continuation task, okay, again, has been found to improve the learning of Chinese structures. And further, Jiang and Tu's study examined whether the continuation task improved the efficiency of second language vocabulary learning. Okay, whether we can use the continuation task to improve vocabulary learning. The participants were Chinese-speaking EFL learners, and a comparison was made between the continuation task and the summary task. There's a difference. For the summary task, you don't have to create any ideas. What you need to do is to shorten the text. Okay? But for the continuation task, you have to create ideas. You could imitate the language used. And for a summary task, you have to create language. You have to create language just to the opposite. Okay? The study says how to find out whether the 2 tasks would equally contribute to improving the vocabulary learning. A filling-in test and a vocabulary knowledge scale were distributed immediately after the task and 1 week later to measure participants' gains of the target words in form, meaning, and use. And the results showed both tasks facilitated elder vocabulary learning because production was involved. But the continuation task outscored the summary task, especially in terms of meaning and use. In other words, the continuation task got the edge over the summary task in terms of vocabulary learning. And there's another study which involved translation continuation task. Okay, where the translation continuation task is just as effective as the other continuation tasks. Okay. The participants in the study were Uyghur students in Xinjiang province in China. So they were native speakers of the Uyghur language. They were asked to continue translating 2 Uyghur stories. Uyghur stories in both Uyghur and the Chinese. The results showed after reading the Uyghur Chinese parallel texts, participants used more language structures from the Chinese translations they had just read, showing that alignment occurred in the translation continuation task. And the quality of the students' translations improved significantly if they continue, okay, use the continuation task. So you can train translators by this effective means. And a more recent study was just published in Language Teaching Research, and the questions addressed were does the linguistic complexity of the input text affect EFL learners' alignment, writing fluency, and writing accuracy in the continuation task? So complexity, or linguistic complexity, was the major issue. Participants were two comparable groups of Chinese undergraduate EFL learners. The results, the participants read and continue a simplified and unsimplified version of the same incomplete story, whose linguistic complexity matched and exceeded their production ability respectively. Okay? The results showed, compared to the unsimplified version, the simplified version resulted in more automatic alignment and greater improvement in writing fluency and accuracy. So, the X argument has given rise to a lot of interesting findings. Okay, and X argument has a lot of implications theoretically and practically. Here I would like to single out two for discussion. McAlon, as you know, is very well known for his interaction hypothesis, and to me, to my mind, the best achievement of his interaction hypothesis research is the distinction between focus on form and focus on forms. Okay, focus on form is learning forms language through communication, and focus on forms is practice language in isolation. Okay, but whether this distinction is useful, yes, it's useful to some extent. But I would like to give an example. A typical example of focus on form is a recast. This has been intensely studied over the past 30 years or so. And recast is defined as a reformulation of an incorrect utterance that maintains the original meaning of the utterance. For example, non-native speaker produced the utterance, "Why he want this house?" Native speaker tries to correct him or her. "Why does he want this house?" Okay, just repeat that, reformulate. This is a recast. Okay, let's make a comparison between focus on form and she, or CEC, or X argument. Both focus on form and the she occur during interpersonal interaction, no problem about that. But for focus on form, it occurs mainly in the formal classroom. But she, or extension, is ubiquitous in naturalistic context, in dialogue, so full of extension. And focus on form is teacher-initiated, but she is learner-initiated. You feel the need, you feel impelled to continue. And for focus on form, learning is via error correction. It's error-oriented. Okay? But for she, learning is achieved by positive input. We learn through positive input. And for focus on form, learners may have access to correct forms without full understanding. But for she, learners have access to forms in rich context. Okay? And what is most important is that for focus on form, there's a lack of learner agency. And for she, learner agency plays important role. Agency is very, very important. Okay. And got how many minutes? Time's up.
Oh, yeah, 5 minutes.
Okay, 5 minutes. I could. Okay. And another implication has to do with Halliday's view of language learning. According to him, language learning is learning how to mean. Not a system of rules which govern language structure, but rather meaning potential. Or what is the meaning potential? He said, what the speaker or hearer can mean, not what he knows. But still, I could not make out this when I first encountered this term. What is more, how to realize the meaning potential? Is there any means? Okay? From the X argument perspective, meaning potential can be construed as the ability to use language concurrently with thinking, and language subserves thinking concurrently. Okay? And Xu, which is meaning-driven and intimately connects language production with comprehension, would help learners realize meaning potential. Okay, and the means to realize the meaning potential. And finally, I would like to conclude with a summary. So the X argument states that through Xu, or extension or CEC, language is successfully learned and high efficiency of learning achieved. The X argument construed language learning as a process of creative imitation, which is driven by the comprehension, production, asymmetry. And the X argument sheds light on time-honored issue, how language is learned and why children acquire language speedily. As the Chinese saying goes, 大道至简, the greatest truth is the simplest. Chomsky has been trying to simplify his theory. He knows that language learning is facilitated here, is facilitated through a very simple procedure, extension or Xu, which is couched in one Chinese word, only one Chinese word, very simple. The language learning mechanism has to be simple to make it possible for babies to acquire language. Okay? Though simple in operation, Xu does much to activate almost all major factors facilitating language learning, L1 and L2 alike. Or at least to name a few of these facilitative factors. For example, learner agency is activated, and communicative intent is aroused. Willingness to communicate is maintained when you extend. And the preceding speech serves as a scaffold for the ensuing language use. And the language use pressure is reduced due to this scaffolding. And the L1 interference is inhibited. And the model is provided for the coherent language use. And what's more, the learner will notice the gap between his interlanguage and the target language. And this noticing is important for language learning. And the language is used in discourse context. Okay? And it conforms to what I call the learn together, use together principle. And selective attention is the core notion in Maclaurin's interaction hypothesis. But here, selective attention comes into play. A learner self-initiate ideas, and integration and alignment of language production with the comprehension, and the intimate connection of input with output have been made possible. And the meaning potential is realized. Okay? So the X argument opens up a new avenue for SLA research, and more papers will appear in the days to come. And the potential for pedagogical applications is very high due to availability of the highly operable continuation tasks. Okay? And Vygotsky's ZPD becomes more operable. And there is a popular saying in language teaching, okay, that is teaching by showing, learning by doing. And learning by Xu, by extension or by Xu, is showing plus doing. The preceding discourse will demonstrate what you should do, or what you can do. And then the continuation will enable learners to practice what they have learned. So, a combination of showing and doing give rise to high efficiency of language learning. Would you like to try in your classroom? Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Would you be able to elaborate a little bit more and walk us through a continuation task? because the continuation task is the pivotal core element for the pedagogical implementation of the X-Factor approach. And it sounds to me like it's a near transfer task, or I just would like to understand what an actual task would look like, or a continuation task rather, would look like in terms of its implementation in a classroom or other pedagogical situation, just so I understand more about the core dynamic here that is resulting in the learning outcomes that you've been able to demonstrate.
So you want me to elaborate a task?
For example, yeah,
No, I'll give an
help
example.
just to know
Okay.
more precisely, that would be very helpful.
Okay, we can choose a piece of reading or a story. We cut the story into two. We move the end and ask students to read the first part and continue to complete, to extend that story by themselves. But the point is that written continuation of the kind has a drawback. The students may not continue according to the original content. They will use their own imagination to continue. Okay? But we can do another thing. We can use a simplified story or simplified fiction, for example, Treasure Island, for example, and we make photocopies of the story, and each time we give students 3 or 4 pages to read and they continue the story, and then we give another 3 or 4 pages as feedback, as they make a comparison. They notice the gap, and then they will try again. They will continue this second part and until the end, and it improves tremendously.
Yeah.
Okay, and one professor at Central China University has got a twin, okay, and whose English is extremely weak in the class, and he used this method and practiced continuation, okay, during the summer vacation. And the university entrance examination scores improved significantly. Okay, just for one summer vacation. Okay, and you can imagine that you align with the writer, and learning a language is to make the other's language become our own. Okay, use the alignment effect. Okay, you might ask that, okay, we can continue the story, but what about the non-fiction? About argumentation, can we continue? You may ask this. We can use what I call comparative continuation task. You may, for example, you may provide the students a piece of an article about American education system, and then you can ask the students, the Chinese students, to continue in comparison and writing about the Chinese education system, for example. But there should be a transition in between. Okay, you have to write down the points you want to make a comparison with, and they continue. So there is always a way to design the continuation task, and there are various combinations. So there's an article that they integrate a listening, speaking, and a video. Okay, and that article published in CILC4 Quarterly last year. Okay, you may find out. And multi-modal means can be introduced into the design of the continuation tasks. Okay, and then the story writings, the story continuation task can be used with primary school pupils. They can continue, say, plays, okay, or can take stage performance after they complete, or they can have a discussion and exchange their works, and so on. there are a lot of variants.
Mhm. So then, in the model here, you have the significant gains in the post-test and delayed post-test. Have you looked at the processes of students engaging here? So doing the micro-interactional analysis of learning as it is happening while participating in these continuation tasks?
Yes. Thank you for reminding me. We did think a lot.
Okay,
Okay, we can also use stimulated recall.
sure.
Okay, and to find out the process.
Mm.
Okay, and the students try to get out of the comfort zone. Okay, when they create ideas, and then it's interesting. We have published papers about the think aloud process.
Yeah.
Okay, and we want to find out what continuation task measures or facilitates.
Mhm.
Yeah,
That's great.
I hope I have answered your
That was
question.
very helpful.
Thank you. One more question, take one more question.
Thank you for that really interesting talk. I can see the pedagogical implications. I just wanted to really clarify whether the focus or the objective of this is to speed up second language acquisition or really improve the quality of the second language production. Because I'm sorry, I think it's a total myth that children learn language faster than adults. Despite the intensive input they get in their childhood, it takes at least 3 years to build the basic syntactic structures. And literacy is another thing. It takes much longer. Whereas adult second language learning, you learn to use the word, to pronounce the word, and to write the word instantly. I mean, I just don't think there is any truth to the speed issue at all. So I'm just wondering whether the objective of this approach is to simply speed up the process or something different.
Both the speed and the quality can be taken care of by the continuation task. Okay, even children, it depends on the focus, your focus. If you want your children to learn particular structures, you may try to design tasks, ask them to continue, deliberately use that task. You underline or just highlight or in one way or another and ask them to use it. Once they create their own ideas, okay, this is very important. Agency comes into play. Then they will be able to retain and use that form very effectively. So this is what the creative imitation hypothesis means. Okay.
All right. Yeah, our time is up. So thank you very much.
Thank you.